pocket, sweating through my flannel like it was a job interview. It wasn't a diamond that came from some fancy boutique. It was my mother's old stone, oval cut, set low into a new band I had reset at a jeweler in Cedar Falls. Simple, solid, nothing flashy, just like my life. She cried, said yes, hugged me like the cold didn't matter. I kissed her forehead and told her, "We'll keep it small, pay our way. I don't want you stressing around work." She smiled and said, "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say." And then she added, "But my family's got a way they do things." I didn't flinch. I said I could handle that. But in my gut, I knew already. We weren't building this thing with the same bricks. Before we start, tell us in the comments which city or country you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today. Thanks. And now the story. My name's Bruce. I'm 36. I live in Ames, Iowa, in a 2-bedroom rental with a busted screen door and a truck that leaks a little oil in the driveway. I told Paula I was a financial consultant. That part wasn't a lie. But I left out that I ran operations for my grandfather's investment firm, Haskins and Ward. Old name. Quiet power. Not the kind that's listed on a billboard, but the kind that signs off on the ones that are. I kept it simple on purpose. Didn't want gold diggers, climbers, or charity cases. I wore plain clothes, brought my own coffee in a thermos, drove my pickup like it still owed me miles. Nobody ever asked what was in the accounts because nothing about me said, "Look closer." My folks died in a highway crash when I was 9. Grandpa Walter raised me. He's 78 now, sharp as rusted wire and twice as stubborn. Served overseas, built his fortune with one phone line and a folding desk. The house he still lives in, a brick place built in 1911, has more backbone than any man I've met. Before I proposed, Walter asked me for 5 weeks, just 5, to live exactly as I was. No reveals, no upgrades, no hint of who I really worked for. "If she loves you," he said, "she won't need the wrapping." I agreed. I wanted the woman, not the reaction. After I proposed, and before we told anyone else, I took Paula to meet him, just the two of us. He poured tea and sat across from me in the study with the fire going. I told him the plan. He nodded once, sipped, and said, "Character first. Let her show you who she is." That was it. Tyler, my best friend since 6th grade, was the only one who knew the full truth. He ran numbers with me and called me out when I started getting too serious. He knew about Paula, knew about the ring, and definitely knew about the Kents. Paula's parents, Marla and Richard, lived about an hour away in a glass box they called a house. Her mom curated dinner parties like museum exhibits. Her dad was a partner at a law firm and a trustee at the Des Moines Arts Fund. Every inch of their lives was framed, filtered, and taste approved. "If she loves you," he said, "she won't need the wrapping." I agreed. I wanted the woman, not the reaction. That's when I noticed it. Paula's voice had changed when she talked about her folks. A little lighter, like she was trying to pad the landing. Tyler warned me. Their house runs on a whisper network. One opinion turns into 10 by breakfast. But I said I could take rules. I thought I could. What I didn't realize then was that their rules weren't about structure. They were about control. And the second I said yes to Paula, I stepped into their system, one test at a time. And trust me, they weren't done testing. We didn't even get a full week to breathe. Paula texted the next morning. Mom and Dad want to host an orientation dinner next Friday. Just us 4, not meet and greet. Orientation. Like I was applying to join the family company. I replied sure and didn't ask questions. I already knew it wasn't optional. I wore a plain gray button-down and dark jeans. Clean boots. No flashy jacket. I left the Rolex Walter gave me in the drawer and wore my $40 Timex. Simple. Unimpressive. Like they wanted. Tyler sent one line back when I told him, they do pregame reconnaissance. Turned out he wasn't kidding. Richard had already called someone at a regional bank. Not even subtle. Just straight up asked a guy who knew of me what my background was. I heard it from a friend of a friend in lending. Word was, Richard didn't like the answers he didn't get. We pulled up to their place just before 6. Glass front, sharp corners, one of those driveways with recessed lighting like a gallery floor. The yard looked like a landscaping crew touched it up 15 minutes before we arrived. Paula squeezed my hand in the car. Her voice was low but serious. Please be patient tonight. Mom can be formal. I nodded and kissed the back of her hand. I'm not here for her. Still, my stomach was already locked up like a safe. Marla answered the door wearing white slacks and a pastel blouse like she was walking into a spa commercial. She kissed my cheek lightly. No warmth, just air, and clocked my entire outfit in one blink. Watch, jacket, shoes. She might as well have beeped like a scanner. Welcome, Bruce, she said like she was welcoming a service technician. Richard was right behind her, all business. Navy blazer, monogrammed cufflinks, and a handshake that lasted just long enough to size me up. We didn't sit for 2 minutes before the first question dropped. So, Marla said as we walked toward the table, where's your family originally from? I gave her the truth. Grandpa raised me. Folks passed when I was a kid. Iowa, through and through. Richard leaned in like he didn't catch that. Any other relatives still in town? Nope, I said. Just me and my grandfather. They nodded, but it wasn't approval. It was calculation. We sat down, no appetizers, no small talk, just water poured and question after question. It felt like they were trying to check off some internal form. How long have you been a consultant? What sort of clients? Do you lease or own your vehicle? What church do you go to? I gave straight answers, calm, honest. No bragging, no defensiveness. But I didn't elaborate either. The less I gave them, the less they could twist. Then came Marla's line, like she'd been holding it all night. Our family prefers full transparency, she said, folding her napkin. We have a tradition of a prenuptial agreement to protect our legacy. She said it as if I should be grateful for the heads up. Richard didn't miss a beat. He reached down and slid a small leather folder next to my plate like it was an appetizer. Just a basic draft, he said, casual like it was nothing more than the menu. I didn't touch it. Paula kept her head down, picking at the edge of her napkin. This is just how my parents do things, she said quietly, like she was warning me but also begging me not to make a scene. The folder sat next to my bread plate like a dare. I finally opened it just enough to skim the contents. The terms were a joke. Everything hers. Nothing mine. No shared property. No inheritance rights. There was even a clause that gave her parents oversight of large shared expenses. Not input, oversight. I shut the folder slowly and set it back on the table like it was still warm. My hands didn't shake, but I could feel the pulse in my neck. I smiled at Marla like I didn't want to rip the linen off the table. We'll review it together. Thanks for dinner. That was the last thing I said for the rest of the meal. I ate what they served. Didn't compliment the food, didn't argue, didn't blink. When we got to the car, Paula shut her door and just sat there breathing hard. Her voice cracked. I love you, Bruce. I know this isn't right, but I grew up in it. Just give me time. Please, she cried quiet, no sobbing. Just the kind of tears that roll down and leave tracks. I'm not trying to hurt you, she said. I need a chance to handle it. Please trust me. I sat there staring at the dashboard for a long second. Then I reached over and took her hand. Okay. But inside, something shifted. Not with her. Not even with them. With me. Because that was the first time I saw how wide the space really was between what we were building and what they were trying to run. The following Friday, we went back for what Marla called the rules dinner. Not sure if she meant etiquette, finances, bloodline, or all of the above. But I came ready. Shirt ironed, shoes clean, no whiskey beforehand. I told myself, sit tall, don't flinch, keep the volume low. I could hear Grandpa's voice in my head like a seatbelt clicking in. Character first. Their house looked exactly the same, like someone wiped every surface twice before we arrived. No fingerprints, no crumbs, not a single item out of place. It didn't feel lived in. It felt managed, controlled. Paula wore a dark green dress and barely spoke during the drive. Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve. She looked beautiful, but distracted, like she was getting ready for a work presentation, not dinner with her fiancé's name on the invite. We walked in. No hug this time, just a crisp nod from Marla and the clink of ice cubes from Richard's glass. Dinner was already plated when we sat down. Lamb, asparagus, quinoa dressed up like risotto. Marla folded her napkin in her lap like she was on camera. No one said a word about the engagement, no congrats, no questions about the proposal, just knives cutting quiet and eyes measuring me. Halfway through the meal, Marla put down her fork. "So, Bruce," she said, voice light, eyes sharp, "tell us about your family." "We know about your grandfather, of course. Any aunts or uncles still around? Cousins?" I didn't let my fork stop moving. "Nope. Folks passed when I was 9. It's just been Grandpa and me since Marla tilted her head a half-inch." "Oh, so there won't be relatives attending from your side?" There it was. Not curiosity, not sympathy, just framing the stage. "Nope," I said, "but we're not short on support." Richard cleared his throat like he was changing lanes in traffic. "And your income? How stable would you say it is?" "Ballpark?" I set down my glass and looked straight at him. "I'm a financial consultant. I do well. Consistent, long-term contracts." He smirked. "Consultant." He said it the way people say freelancer when they mean between jobs. Like I'd just described myself as a barista with a spreadsheet. Marla jumped in with something that felt rehearsed. "You know, Paula's previous suitor, Evan, runs a fund in Midtown. Solid firm, good foundation. He moved quickly." She said it like it was a bedtime story with a moral. Move fast, be proven. Don't show up with vague titles and dead relatives. Then she hit the main act. "In our family," she said, dabbing at her lip like she'd just solved a puzzle, "prenups are only written in favor of the bride. It's not personal. It's tradition." I looked across the table at Paula. She didn't blink. She reached under the table and touched my wrist, like she was trying to diffuse something before it sparked. "Please," she whispered. "Smile and nod. We'll fix it later." I didn't move. I just looked down at my plate. The lamb tasted like ash. Richard leaned forward again like he still had bullets left. "How would you describe your credit habits? Any major debts?" I smiled tightly. "No debts. Credit's fine. I keep things clean." "And your living situation?" he asked. "You plan to rent long-term or own once you're married?" "Plan to rent a year, reassess, take our time," I said. He shook his head like I just said we'd be camping. "Sounds uncertain," he said. Paula was raised to think ahead. Marla joined back in like she'd just remembered I existed. "Also, we say reception, not party, and stationery, not paper invites. It's small, but language matters." It wasn't advice. It was sanding me down one phrase at a time, making sure I didn't embarrass them with how I spoke. I gave her a smile so thin it could have been folded and mailed. "Thanks for the tip." Dinner plates cleared. Coffee came out in delicate china that probably had its own insurance policy. The sugar bowl alone looked like it cost more than my rent. Richard took a sip and went in for the final blow. "Let's talk family reputation," he said. "It matters. We just want to understand what you'll be contributing." I held the cup steady in my hand. "I'll contribute myself, my work, my respect for your daughter." He nodded like I hadn't finished. "And financially?" That word hung in the air like a dare. Across the table, Paula exhaled. Not a sigh, not frustration. It sounded like fear, like she wanted to melt through the floor. I met her eyes. She wasn't scared of me. She was scared of them. I drained the last sip of coffee, set the cup down, and stood up. "Appreciate the meal," I said. Got an early morning. I kissed Paula on the temple and gave her hand a quiet squeeze before walking to the front door on my own. I didn't stop to shake hands, didn't pause to thank the hosts. I just walked out. The night air slapped me clean in the face. It was sharp, honest, cold in a way that cleared your lungs. The sky above was wide open, but my chest felt tight, the kind of tight that doesn't go away after a night's sleep. I climbed into my truck, turned the key, and just sat there with the engine running. I didn't cry. I didn't cuss. I just stared at the windshield and thought about how small you can feel sitting in front of people who are trying to shrink you on purpose. Inside that house, everything had been designed to signal control. The food, the furniture, the words they used, every single thing was there to remind me I didn't belong, not by their definition. But that wasn't what cracked me. It was the look on Paula's face. She wanted to fight for me, but she still hadn't figured out how. I didn't drive home that night. I drove straight to Walter's, no call, no warning. Just pointed the truck toward the mansion and let the cold air bleed through the cracked window. My hands were still clenched at 10 and 2 the whole way there. He was in his study, sitting in that brown leather chair with a mug of black tea and the newspaper folded in his lap. The fire was low. No TV, no music. Just the sound of the wind sneaking past the old windows. He didn't look surprised to see me. He didn't say a word, just nodded once and poured me a cup. I sat across from him and unloaded everything. The interrogation, the prenup folder, Richard's numbers game, Marla's performance review. I didn't hold anything back. I talked until my throat felt dry and my gut was tight again. When I finished, Walter set his mug down and gave me one of those long, unblinking looks he was famous for. "They're testing you," he said finally. "Good." We test back. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. They handed me a contract that says I bring nothing to the table and should feel lucky for the seat. He didn't flinch. If a contract only guards one side, it's not a contract. It's a leash I let that hang there while the fire popped behind him. He tilted his head slightly. "Does she love you?" "Yes," I said. No hesitation. "Is she brave yet?" I shook my head. "Not yet." "Then give her room to stand up," he said. "But draw your line. Quiet, clear, no noise, no drama. A man doesn't shout about his backbone, he just uses it." We worked it out that night like a checklist. No yelling, no revenge plays, just terms, equal prenup, independent accounts, no parental oversight of our budget, joint title for property, no public tests or stunts, and if those lines got crossed again, I would postpone the wedding. Walter nodded. Not cancel. Not threaten, just pause. Control is time. Keep your time, I agreed. Then he added one more thing. Stick to plain living for 5 more weeks. No upgrades, no reveals. Drive your truck, wear your boots, eat from the same kitchen drawer. If she can't do right by you on a normal Tuesday, she won't do it after a Saturday gala. I looked around at the mansion. The thick curtains, the oak shelves, the inherited silver. "You think they'll ease off?" "No," he said. "I think they'll escalate. But now you know what's yours." That night, Tyler came by with takeout. Fried chicken, cornbread, and slaw from the diner off Route 6. We ate it in the kitchen, standing up, like we used to after high school football. He was mid-bite when he said, "So how's Queen Marla of the courtesy audit firm?" I cracked a grin for the first time that day. Still circling. She corrected my word choice twice. Once during lamb, Tyler snorted. Classy. Then his tone shifted. "You know they're already calling around again, right?" Whisper networks lit up. "You're officially punching up?" I raised an eyebrow. "Is that what they think?" He nodded. "Yeah. The whole narrative is you're after a lifestyle upgrade. They're trying to box you in as the charming fixer-upper who got lucky." I didn't say anything, just kept chewing. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed and called Paula. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just laid it out plain. "We're a pair, Paula. Not a committee. And I need to know you're with me when the door closes, not when it's polite." There was a long pause on her end. Then she said, "I know. You're right." She sounded tired, like someone caught between two fires and losing skin on both sides. "My mom invited you to brunch next Sunday," she said after a second. "She wants it to be welcoming this time." I didn't comment, just let it float there. "I want you to come," Paula added. "Please." "I'll come," I said, "but we're not repeating the last dinner. No folder games, no little traps wrapped in compliments," she promised. I believed her, mostly. After I hung up, I got ready for bed, cleaned socks, pulled the curtain shut off the kitchen light. Right before I turned in, Walter called. Quick check-in, his style. One sentence. "No speeches. Keep receipts?" I smiled. That's the plan. He meant actions, not documents. I looked over at the nightstand, where I kept the ring box. The same one my dad used when he proposed to my mother. I'd had the stone reset, but the box, velvet and worn, was untouched. That ring wasn't about sparkle. It wasn't a billboard. It was a link back to something real, something solid. I didn't want polish. I wanted home. And that's why I wasn't about to let them turn this marriage into a board meeting. That Sunday, we walked up the stone path to Marla and Richard's place like we were entering a gated museum, not a home. The hedges were shaped like something out of a botanical guide. The lawn didn't even have a stray leaf. Paula clutched a tray of cinnamon rolls she'd made, which felt about as welcome as mud on a silk rug. Marla opened the door wearing a pale blue dress and pearls like she'd stepped off a charity calendar. She kissed Paula, air only, then turned to me with that sharp social smile that never hid her eyes. "Welcome, Bruce," she said. "This time, we want you to feel properly included." That word hung in the air like perfume sprayed over garbage. Inside, the kitchen island was buried under trays of food, all labeled, arranged like props. Bagels, smoked salmon, mini frittatas, and 5 pitchers of juice nobody touched. Even the fruit salad had height. People buzzed around like they were networking, not eating. Marla had invited 10 of her closest friends and 2 couples from their tennis group. Everyone dressed like they had brunch headshots to submit later. I didn't recognize anyone except Richard, who stood by the window with a Bloody Mary and a face that said he had better places to be. Paula led me to the table, smiling too wide. Her grip on my arm was tight. I sat down between 2 women discussing caterers like military contractors. 5 minutes in, Marla floated over and cleared her throat. "May I see the ring, Bruce?" We didn't get a good look last time. I hesitated. Paula froze. "It's lovely," Marla said quickly, "but in our family, we verify stones." It's a simple courtesy. Before I could say no, she waved over a man in a gray suit I hadn't noticed before. He carried a small velvet tray and a jeweler's loop. "This is Greg," she said. "He's a friend. He just stopped by for coffee." "Isn't that right, Greg?" Greg didn't answer. He held out his hand like I was overdue. Paula looked at me, panicked. I slid the ring off my finger and handed it to him, keeping my face still. He held it up, twisted it under the light, then made a small sound. Middle segment. Reasonable clarity. Nothing above market. Classic reset. He said it like he was inspecting a used tractor. A few people chuckled. One woman said, "It's tasteful," in that voice people use when they don't mean it. I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands on the table, and smiled. "In my family," I said, "we verify respect." Then I turned to Greg. "I'll take that back now." He didn't argue, just placed it in my palm and walked off like he had to catch a train. Paula went pale and squeezed my arm hard under the table. Marla smiled like she hadn't just thrown a grenade in the room. The conversation limped along after that, but no one looked me in the eye. Eventually, the group thinned out and started drifting toward the back patio. That's when phase 2 began. Marla sat beside me at the table and slid a glossy folder across the linen. "If you two want the lakeside venue, the deposit is due today." It books fast. I opened the folder. It was a printed invoice with a 5-figure total due that day. Flowers, catering, venue fee, custom signage. There was even a down payment on a pianist. "I already reserved the date," she said, like she'd done us a favor. I closed the folder without looking at Paula. "We'll decide together and pay in the normal process," I said. "Our finances are private." She didn't blink. "This isn't about finances. It's about proving you're ready to carry what this marriage deserves." Richard joined just in time to pour salt. "A provider provides," he said, swirling his glass like it was gospel. I looked him dead in the eyes. "A partner partners." Silence. No one said a word for a full beat. Then Marla stood up, adjusted her bracelet, and said, "We'll hold the reservation until 5. After brunch, Paula pulled me into the kitchen, while the guests gathered on the patio with mimosas and shade. "I didn't know she'd do that," she whispered. "I swear." Her voice cracked like it did in the car that night. "I'm sorry." I nodded. "Not your move. But it's your family." She looked at the ground. "I know." That night, I wrote everything down. Every sentence, every dig, every look. Walter's rule: no speeches, keep receipts. 2 days later, Paula sent a group email to her parents and the wedding planner. She reinstated 2 of my friends to the guest list, Tyler and my old neighbor from next door. She told Marla the gift appraisal table was canceled. No donation jar, no brand registry with 6-figure items. Marla replied with a passive-aggressive, "Of course, sweetheart. It's your day." But I knew that tone. It was the same one you use when you let the dog on the couch and keep wiping it with a lint brush anyway. I didn't say anything to Paula. I let the changes speak. They weren't huge, but they were hers. That week, Paula got a call from Meredith, her boss at the university. "Friendly heads up," Meredith told her. "If you're going to have family involved in any part of the program, fundraisers, donors, whatever, you'll need daylight between work and personal ties. Ethics rules just got revised." Paula told me about the call while we were folding laundry at her place. I nodded and didn't make it a thing, but I filed it away. That mattered, because they weren't just testing me anymore. They were closing in on her too. The rehearsal started at 4 p.m. sharp. The sun was low, and the coordinator kept checking her clipboard like we were behind schedule. People wandered in with coffee cups and opinions. Paula looked beautiful but tense, flipping through a binder like it was a hostage manual. I just kept breathing slow and steady, repeating Walter's voice in my head like scripture. Character first. The coordinator came over, smiled with her teeth, and tapped her clipboard. "We'll be seating you with guests for the run-through," she said. "Since you have no parents attending, we follow standard placement." No hesitation, no pause to soften it. Just logistics, like I was a piece of equipment with no power cord. People nodded around us like it made perfect sense. I gave her a tight nod. "Sure." But inside, it felt like a cold hand pressed against the back of my neck. Not grief, just displacement. They moved through the schedule like it was a product launch. Ceremony order, song cues, who walks when. Richard brought a laptop. Marla carried a folder. I stood where they told me, kept my mouth shut, and watched everything like a man clocking exits in a burning building. 10 minutes in, Marla walked up, tugged at my collar, and started fiddling with my tie. "No, no," she said, laughing just loud enough for the group to hear. "We'll make a gentleman out of him yet." People chuckled. Not because it was funny, because it was safe. I stepped back slightly. Not rude, not obvious, just enough. Then she started her lesson. She pulled Paula aside and began listing names. Evan, her ex, who always carried himself with confidence. Then Jason, another ex, who never made anyone uncomfortable at formal events. And Bruce, she said, turning toward me, has such a natural energy. We just need to smooth the rough edges. I looked at Paula. Her lips pressed tight. She stepped between us like she was building a wall out of nothing. "Mom, enough," she said. Voice sharp, but quick. Marla didn't even blink. "We're building a marriage, not a charity. And just like that, Paula froze. Eyes dropped, shoulders went tight. That was it. I'd swallowed the ring appraisal. I'd endured the cash stunt. This was the second, and I wouldn't take a third. I turned to the coordinator. "We're done for the day," I said. "You can stop the rehearsal." Everyone looked at me like I'd flipped the table. "Excuse me," the coordinator said. I raised my voice just enough to carry through the room. No yelling, no drama, just volume. "From here on," I said, "we do this with an equal prenup. No public tests, and no parents in our budget. If not, we postpone." Marla blinked fast, like the flash from a camera had hit her wrong. Richard started to say something, jaw tightening. I held up a hand. Not debating it. Then I reached into my inside jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope she'd handed me earlier. It was payment for a custom tux fitting she scheduled behind my back, monogrammed cufflinks included. I walked over to the coordinator and gave it to her directly. "Return this to Mrs. Kent," I said, using her last name on purpose. "I'll wear my own suit." Silence swallowed the room. I walked out. Outside, the air hit like freedom. I heard the door shut behind me and didn't look back. Tyler was already waiting in the truck, engine running, hands on the wheel like he'd seen it coming. He didn't ask questions, just pulled onto the road and said the only thing worth saying in that moment. Good. We drove in silence for a while. The sky was going gray, the kind of dull that comes before rain. He finally glanced over. "You sure you didn't want to light a fire on your way out?" "Nope," I said. "Fires next time." When we got to my place, he didn't hang around, just dropped me off and nodded, like he trusted I had the next part handled. Paula showed up that night around 10. She didn't come inside, just stood in the driveway, crying. She wasn't dramatic, she wasn't performative. Her face was blotchy, and her hair was up in a lazy bun. She wore a hoodie and sneakers like she'd run out of the house the second her parents shut up. "I love you," she said through tears. "I'm scared of them." I've been scared of them my whole life. I stepped out, barefoot on the driveway, and pulled her into my arms. "I'm not walking away," I said. "I'm asking you to walk with me." She nodded against my chest, didn't say anything for a minute. Then she whispered, "I'll try." That was all I needed, because try is where bravery starts. The next morning, Tyler showed up with black coffee and a look on his face like he'd just read something nasty in the group chat. "They've shifted the story," he said, handing me the cup. "Whisper Network's calling you cheap now." I raised an eyebrow. "Cheap?" He sipped. "Yeah. Doesn't want to contribute. Probably used an Amazon coupon for the ring. You know the type of talk." I let that sit. Then I said, "They think cash is courage." Tyler grinned. "Exactly." That same afternoon, Walter and I sat down with a lawyer. Plain office, no marble floors, no branding. Just paper, coffee, and clear eyes. We drafted the prenup together. Simple. Equal. No clauses favoring one side. Independent financial accounts. Property titled to both names. No oversight or advisory rights for parents. No language about family wealth or allowances. Just the two of us. Clean terms. Clean break plan if it ever came to that. When we walked out, Walter held the door and said, "That's one thing done." "Now we hold steady." I nodded. "I've got one more meeting." The wedding coordinator didn't look thrilled when I showed up that evening, but she kept it professional. I told her we'd need a seating adjustment. No more guest versus family language. No placement based on parent attendance or lack of it. "We follow neutral placement," I said, "and no assumptions based on bloodline." She hesitated. "I'll need to clear that with the Kents." I shook my head. "You'll need to clear it with the couple." She didn't argue again. Meanwhile, Paula started making moves of her own. Quiet ones, but they landed. She chose a simpler dress. No designer name, no rhinestone veil, no $800 alterations. Just something that fit her and felt honest. She canceled the microphone at the reception. No toasts from her father's golf buddy. No slideshow of her dating history. No surprise roast disguised as family bonding. When Marla pushed back, gently at first, then with that sharp edge Paula usually avoided, Paula stood her ground. "I want it to feel like us," she told her. "Not like a donor dinner." I wasn't in the room for that conversation, but I saw the fallout. Marla posted a photo of Paula's first dress fitting, the one she didn't choose, with a caption about what could have been. It was subtle, public, but deniable. Typical. Still, Paula didn't blink. She kept moving. Then came the coffee with Meredith. It was a Wednesday. I was at the mechanic, getting the truck inspected. Paula texted after, "Just had coffee with Meredith." She asked one question. "Do you want your marriage to be yours?" I said yes. Looked her right in the face. When I didn't write back for a while. I just read that line over and over. I said yes. Later that night, I asked her to take a walk with me. We ended up on the path behind her parents' neighborhood, where the trees blocked out the skyline and you could almost forget which world you were in. "There's going to be a family reception at your parents' house," I told her. "Half fundraiser, half pre-wedding toast. Walter's planning to attend." She froze. "Please don't do a scene." I looked at her. "I won't." Then I let the pause breathe. "I'll do a line." She didn't smile. She didn't joke. She just nodded. That was the most honest answer she could give. She knew what that meant. 3 years before, Walter had started funneling money through a small regional foundation, one with no direct ties to our name, no press, no noise. Through that, we'd been funding a scholarship program at Paula's university, fully anonymous. Students in financial crisis, no legacy kids, no donors' nieces, just people trying to stay afloat. I'd helped pick the first round of recipients. I remembered one in particular, an older woman finishing her teaching degree while raising 2 kids on her own. She'd been one tuition bill away from quitting. We didn't make a press release. We didn't even ask for thank you letters. Meredith knew. She was the only one who ever really pressed for a full audit of university funding and made transparency a real standard instead of a buzzword. When other department heads shrugged, she pushed. And now she had Paula sitting across from her, sipping espresso, saying the word yes, like it mattered. It did. The moment wasn't loud, but it shook something. That week, I stood outside Walter's study while he went through his notes. He was preparing what he called a practical toast for the reception. He looked up once and said, "Don't interrupt." I'm choosing my nouns carefully. I laughed. "You plan to set fire?" "No," he said. "Just show them the shape of the fuse." I looked over the speech draft. It was short, it was dry, but it was lethal in all the right ways. We didn't need to shout, we just had to speak last. By early spring, the Kents hosted their pre-wedding reception, like they were launching a new product line. Their house looked like the inside of a fundraiser catalog: white flowers, brushed silver, soft jazz you couldn't name, but knew cost money to license. Every light was dim just enough to hide sweat and show veneers. Donors circled like swans. Board members stood in tight knots, sipping wine with too much surface tension. There were more photographers than relatives. Paula called it a formality. I called it a control show. Richard worked the room like election season had started. Perfect handshake, steady eye contact, compliments tailored like his suits. He introduced Paula to a trustee who'd pushed a vendor her dad liked. Subtle move, wrapped in fake warmth. I watched from the side, sipping water. Not because I didn't belong, because I'd already seen what belonging meant in their world. Then Walter arrived. No driver, no announcement. Just walked through the front door like it was his house, not theirs. Dark charcoal suit, no tie. Crisp shirt. Leather shoes with a quiet step. He carried nothing, said nothing, and every conversation dropped to half volume the second he stepped in. Marla greeted him with a smile tight enough to crack porcelain. "Walter, we're so glad you could make it." He shook her hand. "Thank you for hosting." No hug, no pretense, just manners. He found me first. gave me a nod, then moved to Paula and kissed her cheek. "You look well, dear." "Thank you," she said. Her voice was steady, but I saw her thumb tapping against her other hand. He waited until people were seated, round tables, perfectly spaced, name cards with cursive print and donor levels in fine print under some of them. Then he stood behind his chair, placed both hands on the backrest, and cleared his throat. No clinking glasses, no spotlight, just silence. "Good evening," Walter said. "I'd like to thank Richard and Marla Kent for their hospitality." People nodded, polite murmurs. "I want to congratulate Bruce and Paula. Marriage is not a merger, it's a promise. And as part of that promise, I would like to announce that after their wedding, I'll be transferring management rights to a block of our company's shares to Bruce, as was planned since he turned 30. You could feel it happen, like someone unplugged the speaker system. Even the silverware paused. Walter continued without blinking. "This transfer is conditional on a fair prenuptial agreement, signed by both parties, equal protection, equal trust." I caught Marla's expression. The smile stayed on, but her left eye twitched. Richard stared at his glass like it owed him answers. Walter wasn't done. "We also intend a community grant," he said, $320,000 over 2 years, to support the outreach program at the university where Paula works. People gasped softly, polite gasps from trained mouths. He kept going. "These funds will be administered independently and are contingent on the university maintaining its current ethics code. Paula will have no involvement in the grant's distribution. No family placements, no advisory roles, no strings." He said it smooth like Sunday tea, but there was iron under every word. Meredith, seated near the back, didn't blink. Just nodded once, like she'd been waiting for the room to catch up. Richard cleared his throat. "We've always supported transparency." He tried to pivot. "One of our preferred vendors has worked well with the board, local, trustworthy. They've handled similar programs." Walter looked at him for the first time since he entered the room. "Then we're aligned. Vendor selection is the university's, not ours." Marla clapped, soft, slow. "How generous," she said. "Of course, we assume Bruce is comfortable with our family's standards." I set my water down and stood. "I'm comfortable with respect. We'll be signing an equal prenup. No public tests. Our budget is our business silence again. But this time, not stiff, not hostile, just recalculating." Paula stepped beside me. She slid her hand into mine and faced the room. "That's what we're doing," she said, clear and low. She hadn't planned to use the mic, but it was right there. She took it off the stand and held it like it weighed nothing. Some of the older donors clapped politely. Others just watched. A few turned their attention to Paula and came over to speak with her. Soft words, genuine tones. You could feel the weight shift. One group leaned forward. Another group leaned out. It wasn't loud, but it was happening. Tyler texted me from the back wall, where he was standing near the bartender. Whisper network just shorted itself. I didn't reply. I just put my hand on Paula's back and stood there while the music swelled up again and the air in the room found a new temperature. Because sometimes all you need is one voice with receipts and a calm tone to reset an entire room. 2 days after the reception, we sat in the wedding coordinator's office with the final prenup contract on the table. The room was quiet, no legal jargon, no drawn-out ceremony, just signatures, initials, and one clean sentence at the end. This agreement was entered into voluntarily by both parties, without pressure or interference from any external family member. Walter sat to my left. Tyler was across from him, flipping a pen in his hand like he was waiting for someone to flinch. It took 20 minutes. No drama. The terms were exactly what we laid out weeks earlier: mutual protection, joint property title, separate accounts, and no parental control over anything. Not our spending, not our living arrangements, not a damn thing. I signed first, then handed the pen to Paula. She didn't pause. She didn't glance at anyone for reassurance. Her hand didn't shake. She signed her name, set the pen down, and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 2 years. She looked up at me and gave this small nod, just enough to say, "I'm here now." The coordinator, to her credit, didn't add any fluff. She slid the documents into a folder and got to work on the checklist. "No mic time for unplanned toasts," she said. "Slideshows, cut, seating, neutral. No jokes at the couple's expense." She didn't even flinch when she moved Tyler and my neighbor back onto the guest list. No questions, just added them and moved on. That night I drove to the Kent's house. I didn't ring the doorbell. I just slipped the tux envelope into the mailbox, with a note written in my plainest handwriting. "Appreciate the gesture." Returning it, I wore my own navy suit. No monogram, no brand bark. The next evening, Walter hosted a dinner at the mansion. Just 12 people. Same place, same number of courses, same order. But the air was different. It didn't feel like we were being measured. It felt like a table. Richard was there. Marla too. Paula's shoulders stayed relaxed. There was no clipboard. No clipboard meant no agenda. Walter opened with small talk. Asked Richard about the current arts exhibit his firm was funding downtown. Richard gave a practiced answer, but Walter actually listened. He didn't undercut it, just nodded and thanked him for sharing. Then he turned to Marla. "What was your favorite meal growing up?" She blinked like she hadn't been expecting that, then said, "Stuffed shells. My grandmother made them every Christmas." Walter smiled. "That's a real answer. Thank you." There were no digs, no traps, just questions, human ones. The meal came out slow. Roast chicken, asparagus, salad with lemon vinaigrette. Nothing flashy. But every plate felt earned. Between the main and dessert, Walter stood. He didn't raise a glass or tap silverware. He just cleared his throat. "In our family," he said, "we value character over pedigree. Money is a tool. Family is a choice." Then he looked at Paula. "Tonight we choose to support the couple." That was it. No applause, no counters, no need. The room got quiet, like a church after the choir sits down. After dinner, Paula took my hand and led me to the front table. Quietly, without a word, she pulled out a chair and sat me down, on the family side. She didn't ask, she didn't announce it. She just left me there. People noticed. No one said a thing. Later that week, I sent out a short list of handwritten invitations for the garden tour at the mansion. Walter had opened it for early spring, and the maples were just starting to bud. I didn't send the invites to everyone. I sent them to Meredith, 2 of Paula's co-workers, Tyler, and Mrs. Green, the neighbor who used to watch me after school when Walter worked late. The people who showed us respect before the reveal. Not a punishment, not a power move, just a line. We got married on a clear Saturday in late spring. The sky looked scrubbed clean. No rain threats, no gusts. Just quiet sun and enough breeze to move Paula's hair when she walked down the aisle. She wore the simple dress she picked herself. No beading, no train. Just clean lines, soft white, and a calm in her face that hadn't been there before. I wore the navy suit I owned, the one that didn't need anyone's approval. No microphones, no speeches, no slideshows of childhood photos or roasts from people who didn't know us. Just 2 chairs at the front, 2 signatures, and vows we wrote without committee edits. Walter sat in the front pew, right side, hands folded, no tie. He didn't stand for photos, didn't clap during the kiss, but when we said, "I do," he smiled once. That was his way of crying. A few days after the wedding, the paperwork was finalized. Walter transferred management rights to a block of company shares as promised. I signed the documents without ceremony. It didn't change my breakfast. I still made my own coffee, still drove the same truck. It just meant more work I already knew how to do. The university accepted the community grant with the ethics clause exactly as Walter submitted it. Meredith emailed him to say, "Thank you. No CCS, no press release, no social post." Paula read the email at the kitchen table, closed her laptop, and said, "That's how it should be." Her parents still show up now and then. Birthdays, holidays, the occasional dinner. They sit where the chairs are, not where the microphones used to be. Richard keeps things polite. He sticks to neutral topics, real estate trends, wine regions, politics if it's safe. He always offers to pay, but doesn't argue when I say we've got it. Marla smiles more than she used to. Not wide, not fake, just enough. Like someone learning a new language and trying not to mispronounce it. Every now and then, she asks if we'd like to review some family traditions. We always answer the same way. We're good. It lands soft. She nods, drinks her tea. Tyler still checks in once a week. Same timing, usually Thursday night. He'll call or swing by, bust my chops about the whole consultant cover story like I was working out of a storage unit the whole time. Then he asks about the garden. How's the rosemary doing? That maple still hanging on? That's the kind of friend you don't replace. The kind who never asked me for a resume but always knew the job I was doing. I kept the ring appraisal card, the one Greg scribbled on. It's in the top drawer of my desk, next to a broken tape measure and an old bus pass. It's not about the ring anymore. It's a reminder to measure people by how they handle small power, not big money. Anyone can give generously with an audience, but it takes something else to treat someone with respect when no one's watching. Since the wedding, we've made a habit of visiting the mansion every Sunday afternoon. Paula likes to walk the garden. Walter sits by the tall window near the east wing, where the light hits just right around 2. He watches the maple leaves shift, the breeze knock the wind chime, and the birds fight over the feeder. Every time he asks me the same thing. What'd you learn this week? And every time, I've got something. Last Sunday, I told him, control isn't the loudest voice in the room. It's the one that doesn't flinch. He nodded. Didn't say a word. I never wanted a spotlight. I didn't need a brand name family or a scripted ceremony. I wanted a partner and a quiet house. We got both. The shares, the mansion, the grant, that's all just tools. Respect is the furniture that lasts. If your partner's family tried to control your marriage plans, would you draw a hard line or stay silent? Drop a comment, even just good story or your take. If you'd like to support the channel, tap super thanks. It's optional, but really helps. And please like and subscribe. Huge for us, easy for you.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.